All right, yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Dominic Peterson, aka Doug Zone 503, talking all things Oregon football. If you're not following, if you're not subscribed already, you guys know what to do. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. All right, guys, we're here to talk Holiday Bowl preview. We got North Carolina, Oregon, big time bowl game coming up. We're gonna preview and predict it. I got my guest, Isaac Shade, host of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast with the Locked On Podcast Network. Say what's up, man.
Hey, Dominic, thanks so much for having me on. Great to be with you. And shout out to everyone out there listening. Go Ducks. And what's up to Phil Knight?
Oh, yeah, man. Phil, Uncle Phil. Yes, sir. He was just on a recruiting. He was on campus for a recruiting, big time recruiting visit for a lot of guys. So that was big time. That was awesome. So can't wait for this bowl game. It feels like with all the transfer portal news and recruiting news just going on, it feels like this has kind of been overlooked a little bit, not at least on the Oregon side, not a lot of attention going into this game. So it's good to get together and really focus on what's important here, because there's actually still football ready to be played on the field.
There absolutely is. It's great. And thankfully, both these quarterbacks are going to be in and doing it. And I think that's what most of America is going to tune in to watch.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's going to be a big time quarterback matchup. We'll get into it. So looking into it, Oregon's number 15 coming in at 9-3, North Carolina 9-4, 9-4 because they lost their conference game to Clemson, correct? If I'm correct on that.
That's correct. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, to Clemson. Yeah, tough loss there. But coming into the Holiday Bowl, Oregon misses out on their conference opportunity, losing to their rivals, Oregon State. So that was tough. They didn't even get in when they were, had a pretty clear path towards the end of the season. This game will be played at Petco Park in San Diego, California, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. Oregon comes in as a 13.5 favorite, according to FanDuel. The last time I've checked, I'm not sure if that line has changed since 2 days ago.
I've seen it float between there and like 14.5. It's just right in that range. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. So almost about a 2-score favorite there. According to ESPN, Oregon is a 69.8% chance to win here. So Oregon comes in as pretty much the clear favorite. I love the matchup. I think this is the first overall matchup in football that North Carolina's Oregon's played. We get to experience some history here with that. I love the color matchup as well. North Carolina's baby blue versus, Oregon's green and yellow. I'm not even sure what they're coming out with yet. Their jerseys, always something to talk about. And then, as you said, the quarterback matchup, right? Elite quarterback matchup with Bo Nix, Drake May. Oregon fans stoked that Nick's going to return for next year. So, yeah, what's your thoughts on the matchup? Just coming in,
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. This is the first ever matchup between these two schools in football. And you love it because it's two of the greatest colors and uniforms and stuff like that. And so, and I'm sure Oregon Ducks fans are anxious to get some revenge from that Final Four loss back in 2017 on hardwood. I think would be the one that stands out probably most prominently to everyone. In terms of your question, that's great on the matchup is for North Carolina, it's essentially been a tale of two seasons. The first 10 games of this season, they finished that off by clinching the ACC Coastal at Wake Forest on November 12th. And at that point, they're 9-1. They're looking at a home game against Georgia Tech to get to their first 10-win game season since 2015. And it kind of feels like they're cruising. But then they lose that game to Georgia Tech. They lose on Thanksgiving week to NC State at home, who is, folks might not be aware, but in football, really it's more NC State that's the rival more so than Duke. And so they lose that game. And then, as you already said, lose to Clemson in the ACC championship game. So now this becomes the fourth attempt to get to a 10-win season. And I think for Carolina fans coming into this game, if you had told them preseason, hey, you're going to be 9-4 this year after Sam Howell is gone from North Carolina, they absolutely would have taken it. It's just hard pill to swallow because of the way they've gotten to 9-4. So in terms of thoughts on the matchup itself, I think what we've already both said is it's totally about the quarterbacks. Both these defenses are frankly porous. Neither of them is very good. And so for me, it's a first team to 50 kind of game. And I know we'll make score predictions and stuff later, but the big question always coming into these bowl games outside of CFP is which team is more motivated, what players are in, what players are out. And I think those are really the biggest things. For coaching staffs, they're looking at, yeah, we want to go out and win. But the big win for us as a coaching staff is we get 12 or so more practices with our team ahead of next season.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like you said, Bo Nix, Drake May is gonna be a crazy matchup. It's kind of funny how you said like it's been a whirlwind of events. Same with the Oregon side. You start out against Georgia where all eyes are on you and that big matchup, and you just get smashed to the ground by the Bulldogs, and
who should win another national championship. Let's not Oregon is in good company losing that game.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think it just made Oregon a lot more looked a lot more better on that 8-game win streak. Right after that, they rattle off 8 straight wins, against BYU, good ranked opponent at that time. UCLA, College Game Day was there, and momentum was all on your side. And then you go to that Washington game, and it's a shootout game, really good offenses. And Bo Nix gets hurt with, I think, like 3-4 minutes left. And the backup quarterback, Ty Thompson, has to come in and kind of stalls out the drive a little bit. Washington scores, and it was tough loss to Washington there. You come home against Utah, who actually won the Pac-12, and you get a close win there. Things are things are still on the up and up, and then you just get a absolute devastating loss to Oregon State in comeback fashion. They rattle off I think it was like 24 straight points or something like that.
That was painful. That was painful to watch as a third party observer.
Oh man, and then Husky fans, they were celebrating because we're out of the Pac-12 championship now. Yeah, it was a bad way. So I think for both teams, this matchup, just talking about it, like for both teams, I think they're really going to want it because just the way things kind of ended out. Like you said, this is like their 4th opportunity to try to get 10 wins for the Tar Heels and the Ducks. The way they ended their season losing to both rival squads, I think they're going to want to end their season on a high note. So 100%. So speaking about this quarterback matchup a little bit here, Bo Nix, Drake May, for maybe some Duck fans that haven't seen Drake May play, what are we getting out of May? What kind of player is he? I see he has over 4,000 yards passing, 35 touchdowns, 67% completion rating. So get into his play style a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was widely accepted that Sam Howell, who had been the starter the past 3 years, was the best quarterback in Carolina history. And coming into this season, people didn't know what to expect, partly because Drake May wasn't even named the starter until game week of week 0. Carolina started off in week 0. And so I think there was a lot of that is like, is he going to be the quarterback, or is it Jacoby Criswell, who was the backup all season? For Carolina, for the fan base, that has changed in year 1 of Drake May. I think people believe now that he will leave after next season as the greatest quarterback in North Carolina history. In terms of what kind of player he is, this dude is an all-out competitor. There's some funny stories of some recruiting stuff at Mac Brown's house and things of that nature. He is a big kid, just shy of 6'5", like 220.
Wow.
And so, it's his arm, as you talked about, that everyone looks at first. Super impressive, can make every throw in the book. I mean, anytime you listen to a game this year, you hear every announcer saying, that is an NFL throw. That's an NFL throw. You're like time after time after time, and we could clip it all out, and it's fun to watch. But here's the other thing, Dom. He's the leading rusher on this team as well. Now, that also not only speaks to what he can do, but what the running backs haven't done, frankly. But he's a guy that just brings everything. And even as a redshirt freshman, has played with a wisdom beyond his years this season. It's been a little more difficult the past 3 games in that losing streak. Part of that is the 3 most difficult defenses he's played all year. But still is a guy that keeps putting North Carolina in the position to win. And moreover, he's just the kind of person you want to root for. If in an interview with him, you'll hear him say yes sir more times than like in an army platoon or something, right? Like he's just a good young man and the kind of person that anyone wants to root for.
Awesome. Yeah, Drake May sounds like an absolute stud, can run past, great character to him. man, it's going to be exciting to watch. As you said, he can run and pass. Bo Nix can also bring that to the table. Nix actually has 1/3 of the carries here at Oregon. So big time, big part of that run offense. I think him being a little healthier, we could see him run the ball better than he did in the last 3 games, which kind of halted Oregon's offense a little bit, given he was a big part of the run game for the Ducks. So yeah, big time Drake May, Bo Nix battle. Who are some of the top weapons for North Carolina's offense? Who's he going to be thrown to? Who's some of the big weapons to watch out for?
Absolutely. Well, obviously, because of his ability to both throw and run, he is 1A himself. But beyond that, the next name to know is a name that you don't need to know because he's not playing, and that's Josh Downs. I know we'll talk more about him later, so I won't say much now, but he's gone off for NFL draft prep and is the stud behind Drake May. So after that, we really got to start looking at it. And Carolina has a pretty balanced passing attack. Drake May spreads the ball around indiscriminately, like you think of some of Tom Brady's best efforts, where it's like, I don't care who's out there, I'm going to spread the ball around, and that's what Drake May does. So, in terms of wide receivers beyond Josh Downs, the biggest name to know is Antoine Green, who this will be his final game as a Tar Heels, kind of run out of eligibility. He started the year injured with a collarbone injury, but he's the dominant downfield threat and the guy to watch out for to take the lid off the secondary, if you will. The guy that'll be stepping in for Josh Downs is Kobe Paysour, who got a couple starts earlier in the year when Josh Downs was out injured, and actually was the third receiver in the starting the game the past couple games, coming in for some less reputable or less trusted receivers. And so I think in the absence of Josh Downs, my expectation is that the third starter for this game will be J.J. Jones. So watch out for him. Two other names to know at the receiver position are Gavin Blackwell and a really, really talented freshman in Andre Green, who hasn't played much because they've been trying to save eligibility. But as we know now, the NCAA has come out and said, hey, you can play in bowl games, anyone, and not be penalized for it. The other thing in the receiving game is that Carolina has 3 tight ends that are all heavily involved in the receiving game, and something Oregon fans should be on the watch out for. Kamari Morales is the starter, but it's Bryson Nesbitt is the one that's really the most dynamic of the tight ends. He's kind of a tight end wide receiver hybrid and kind of moves all around the field. And so he's the one that I think is the one to really watch out for, both in the short and long term. And then the third guy is John Copenhaver, who'll come in and catch a couple passes here and there, but is not as dominant as the other guys. In terms of running backs, it's been an odd year. Preseason, this was the deepest room on the team. 6 running backs on the depth chart with the goal of getting it down to 2 or 3. It's just been war of attrition. One after another has fallen down. British Brooks was the pursued starter heading into the year. Season-ending injury before games even started. DJ Jones was the first starter. Ineffective. Omarion Hampton, true freshman, took over after that. Not even an early enrollee. He was a summer enrollee and was the starting running back for a D1 team like week 2 and 3. And so crazy stuff there. He was not as effective as needed, so Caleb Hood took over. He's out for the season with an injury. And so the guy we've seen basically the last month as a starting running back is Elijah Green, who's getting the lion's share of the carries. Really neat story. I'd encourage people who are interested to learn more to go read up on Elijah Green's progression, but he's the guy you expect to start in the backfield.
Okay, great. Yeah, I like those players. A lot of names there listed. I guess the question I have out of that is, what do you think has to do with that? That running back room being a little ineffective, rather than what people were expecting from the preseason. What do you think that has to do? Maybe offensive line, or is it coaching? What do you think goes into that, in your opinion?
That's a great question. Some of it is just frankly the injury bug, right? Like one of the guys that I mentioned, Caleb Hood, has been in and out his whole career injured. British Brooks, the guy that was supposed to be day 1 RB1, is just kind of a freak accident in like a scrimmage the week before the first game, that kind of thing. And then I think the freshmen are the most talented running backs on the roster. The other one I didn't name is George Pettaway. So there's these 2 really talented freshmen. They're just not ready yet. They're not good enough in pass pro. And so really it just comes down to Elijah Green is really the one that is the most trustworthy, both in terms of running the ball. He gets north and south really well. You love to see that. But you can trust him in pass protection. And he came in as, frankly, a terrible receiver, but has really made strides in that regard. And so I think it's just a weird kind of amalgamation of different things that have not allowed the running backs to be a strong room.
I see. Yeah, I mean, the injury bug can really do that to you, and then you get the young guys in there. 100%, I could see that. Oregon's running back room. We expected a guy and Byron Cardwell to really step up at the beginning of the season, but he hasn't really seen snaps. Matter of fact, he's in the transfer portal as we speak. But a guy, the two transfers, Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington, those guys have really stepped up for Oregon and been great running backs. At wide receiver, you got Troy Franklin leading the way there. Tight end Terrence Ferguson has been a steady, reliable source for Bo Nix to go to. You mentioned some tight ends for you guys. How often does North Carolina go to the tight ends? Because Oregon does kind of struggle covering really good tight ends.
Well, it kind of, to that point, it's kind of depending game to game on what the coaching staff is seeing on film, right? Like if in games where it's against teams where they can exploit that, which will come into play with probably some things we talk about later, they will. And so I would expect to see all three of those guys have at least a reception or two in this game, especially with Josh Downs out. I think that's another part of the answer to that question. And
100%.
because like Kamari Morales, the starting tight end, will be the second most trusted receiver behind Antoine Green. And so I would watch for the tight ends to have a pretty heavy role in the offense in this game.
Okay, yeah, 100%. That's always a place where a lot this season that a lot of the opponents have aimed at Oregon's in the middle of the field. So you mentioned Josh Downs entering the draft. He won't be playing in this game. How big of a loss do you think that is offensively for UNC? And is there any other notable players we should talk about on the UNC side that won't be playing in this bowl game?
For sure. Well, to not under or oversell it, it's a massive loss for North Carolina. It just can't be, I can't say it strongly enough how big a deal it is to not have him in. Now, that said, there were guys, I mentioned Kobe Paysour, who stepped in for him earlier this season when he was out injured. He's another slot receiver, but still, it's just not the same because Josh Downs is just so electric in not just catching the ball, but in space as well. He's just instinctive with where to go to avoid DBs or safeties when to get some yak yards, and so it's just it's a massive win for Oregon that they don't have to face him, quite frankly. As for the Tar Heels, yeah, other people that are missing. The funny thing is the next biggest missing piece is not actually a player. Carolina lost their offensive coordinator, Phil Longo, to Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, and he is already gone and took the offensive line coach with him. So both of those guys are gone. Carolina just brought in a new offensive coordinator from UCF, but he's not coaching in the practices leading up to this game, nor will he be coaching in the game itself. That's Chip Lindsey is his name. And so Carolina's wide receivers coach, Lonnie Galloway, is stepping in for play calling duties. And so that to me is, after Josh Downs, is the next biggest and most important drop off of somebody that won't be there. But in terms of other players to know, the secondary is decimated by this. Both starting cornerbacks are not playing in this game. They're both transferring out. Tony Grimes and Storm Duck. Storm Duck's one of my favorite names in all of college football.
Yeah, I seen that one.
Yeah, dude. Like, and that's the bigger loss. It's interesting. Tony Grimes is one of the highest rated recruits ever to go to North Carolina, but just really hasn't had a good year. Just to be honest with it. But Storm Duck is a big loss in the secondary. And also starting safety Cam Kelly is transferring out and won't be playing either. And so Carolina is young at all three of those positions. Marcus Allen, a freshman, steps into one of the cornerback positions. Ohio State transfer legend Cavazos will be the other cornerback. And then you see another true freshman in Will Hardy, who will be starting at the safety spot. Carolina also, so they run a 4-2-5 scheme on defense with just two linebackers, and those two linebackers have been the staple, Cedric Gray and Power Eccles. The problem is their main backup, Rara Dilworth, is also transferring out and won't be in this game. So you lose a lot of depth at the linebacker position. That's a big blow. Jacoby Criswell, who lost the quarterback battle to Drake May, is understandably transferring out. He's going to play for Arkansas next season, which is home for him. That's not a big deal unless Drake May goes down, because it's a massive drop off at quarterback after Criswell. And so that's the reason why I bring that one up. You lose a couple other defenders, but those are really the names of note that really matter. Stepping in for the defense in a big way will be an undersized guy at defensive end, Kamen Rucker, who's just one of those guys with a motor that goes and goes and goes. And pretty cool thing, he sang the national anthem at the Final Four for North Carolina last April.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Okay, yeah, man. A lot of things going in and out for both programs. I think Oregon's had up to like I think they're up to 17 transfers at this point, which is a good and a good thing, a good and bad thing, excuse me. But yeah, I think the most notable that won't be playing for Oregon, especially on the defensive side, is defensive back Christian Gonzalez, arguably their best defensive player. He's going to be a top corner in this year's draft. Really played really well for the Ducks, and a struggling secondary. You lose your top corner. I think freshman Jaleel Florence will probably step into that corner spot, along with Triquez Bridges. Dante Manning's another guy, former 5-star, that could step in there. And the secondary has not played well, just to put the truth out there.
It goes both ways, so no worries.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're going to see a lot of great quarterback play in this game because of that. DJ Johnson up front. We lose him. I think he's going to be entering the draft as well. And then offensively for Oregon, Dante Thornton, he was a big time wide receiver. It really hurts to lose him. He didn't really start, but he did come in and make big time plays, especially late in the season. Maliki Mataval is a backup tight end to Terrence Ferguson that would come in and got a lot of reps and a lot of play time. He goes ahead and enters the transfer portal, and Seven McGee was also an electric player that could return kicks and, come off the sweep. And he also entered the transfer portal. So a few guys for Oregon that won't be playing in this bowl game. That's pretty notable there. Let's go ahead and get to our 3 keys to the game here. Let's just jump to that. What's some of your 3 keys for a North Carolina victory in this game?
Well, the first one is Drake May being Drake May. The first 10 games of the season, he had moved himself into position as a Heisman. I wouldn't call him the Heisman front runner, but a New York invitee. We'll put it that way. And then it's just kind of fallen off these past 3 games. Not necessarily on him, but as I said earlier, they faced their 3 toughest defensive units of the season in these 3 games, particularly Clemson, who's just always insane on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah.
And so Carolina has to figure out a way to get Drake May back to being that dude that they saw the first 10 games. Not that he was bad in the other 3, it's just comparatively because he was so good in the first 10 games of the season. Now, thankfully, as we've both said, Carolina's defense is not good. Frankly, neither is Oregon's. And so we should expect to see Drake May be able to make some hay against the Oregon defense. And so that's the first thing I'm looking for as a key to the game. The second one is red zone efficiency. As part of this losing streak, Carolina's red zone efficiency has just fallen off the table. The first 9 games of the season, they only had 4 red zone trips in which they didn't score a point. 3 of those were end of game kneel downs in victory formation. So only had 1 red zone trip in the first 9 games where they didn't score. And that was just a missed 4th and goal opportunity where they didn't connect on a pass. But since then, the 4 games since have been not good. And so Carolina has to find a way to get that red zone efficiency back. Part of the trouble there is going to be not having Josh Downs. And can you get the running game going inside the 20? Those are a couple things to look at there. And then number 3, the third key for me for Carolina is the defense all year has been a bend but don't break defense under the return of Gene Chizik to the defensive coordinator position. It's not that they have been necessarily great at getting off the field on 3rd down, those kind of things, but they've made the play when it matters most. Other than that Georgia Tech game that they recently lost earlier in November, other than the NC State game recently. You make one or two different plays on defense in those games, and Carolina's easily 11-2 rather than 9-4. And so the defense has to find a way to, like, how do we bottle up that magic, maybe get a turnover or two, and find their way into being that bend but don't break defense once again. Those would be my three keys.
100%. I think my keys kind of go with your three keys a little bit. Number one here, I got hold May to under 350 yards of passing, which is going to be a major challenge for Oregon. May is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, as you said. Ducks pass defense has been abysmal all year. So I think, trying to at least contain May to under 350 yards passing, which already, is a tough task. That would probably give the Ducks a good a good percentage to win the game there. And then number two is like you said, you guys got a savvy defense. You make the play when it's time to make the play. I think that's the same thing for the Ducks. You got to win the turnover battle. Winning the turnover battle is huge in these, even matchup shootout style games. Whatever team can create those turnovers, I think is huge. And then last but not least, I think the Ducks, if they can run the ball effectively for over 225 yards of offense, rushing the ball, I think, with this Oregon veteran offensive line, a healthier Bo Nix, I think this Oregon team can be a balanced team, and I think that's when they're at their best. So if they can do those three things, I think they have a good shot at winning this game.
Absolutely. There could easily be some Holiday Bowl offensive records set in this one for sure.
100%. I agree, man. Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely electric. These quarterbacks are some of the best in the nation. So final score prediction time. Let's get into it. So I'll go ahead and start out, and then I'll leave you with the finale here. So I think this is obviously a terrible matchup for both sides, on the defensive side of the ball, both great quarterbacks, some of the best in the nation. The Ducks, they haven't been good all year against the pass. They allow about 276 yards per game, which is number 117th in college football. And against really good quarterbacks, I mean, they've been pretty awful. Stetson Bennett, Heisman finalist, he went 25 for 31, 368 yards, which is was his season high, actually, 2 touchdowns. Michael Penix absolutely went off on Oregon, 26 of 35, 408 yards of 2 touchdowns. So weak secondary, you lose your NFL draft pick going against Drake May. But like I said earlier, where do I think Oregon can win this game? In my keys of the game, I think the run game for Oregon, you got a good pass game versus a good run game. I think the balance that Oregon can bring, and like you said, if they can make those scrappy plays, whatever defense can do that and make the timely play, I think will come on top. I think Oregon being the more balanced team with their run game, and I think they can effectively run the ball a little bit more with the healthier Bo Nix. I think that puts them on top by 10 points. I got Oregon 48, UNC 38, but I got it in like a shootout fashion.
We are very closely aligned on that, and I'm with you. I think a great game script for Oregon would be go to that run game and keep Drake May off the field. That's probably your best recipe, right there. For me, here's the thing. Oregon's going to win this game, should win this game outright. My score is very close to yours. I had 52-42.
Okay.
So we're very far off. So I have Oregon winning outright. I have Carolina covering that 13, 14 point spread, whatever it is. I think it's one of those shootout games where it's just like last team with the ball kind of wins, perhaps, although that doesn't necessarily align with the 10-point margin, but you get my point. The more intriguing thing for me is the over-under for this game, which is set at 73. You kidding me? They could go over on that in the first half, Dom, right?
100%. Yeah, that's wild.
They're not going to, but the point's well taken. And so if you are someone who is of the betting persuasion, let me encourage you to go ahead and smash that over and get to it. I really do think both teams will struggle to stop each other. It's just about who struggles the least, right? It's like in an election, you don't always necessarily vote for someone you want. You vote for the lesser of two evils. And I think that's the thing here. Who sucks less on defense?
Exactly.
The winner of this football game. But as we said earlier, the nation is tuning in to see 2 of next year's early front runners for the Heisman candidate. And I think that's what makes this such an intriguing matchup. I just think for the Tar Heels, they have too much attrition both from an injury standpoint and an opt-out standpoint, both on the defensive line and in the secondary, to get any kind of push up front or any kind of stop in the secondary. And I think that allows Oregon to win. Running away. Also, I'd be remiss to not mention my favorite Oregon football moment ever, which was the bowl game against the Jameis Winston Florida State team, when he just fell backwards and the ball fell out of his hand, and then all the memes and gifs that came out of that.
Tony Washington picked it up. He's actually an Oregon analyst, so that's what's up. Yeah, that's awesome, man. That was a great moment. Yeah, that was a great moment in Oregon football. I think I was, man, how old was I? I was still in middle school when that happened. So yeah, man, that was a great time. Just before we go, since we got a little bit of time, I've been hearing talks about Drake May maybe transferring and stuff. You got any insight on that?
For sure. So interestingly, the same day that Carolina's offensive coordinator announced he was leaving, I remember this vividly. It was just like 2 Wednesdays ago. I was at my wife's Christmas dinner party for work. And I was like, this is terrible timing for this all to be coming out. But about an hour later, Drake May tweeted I forget the exact quote, but basically like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here. And that was the voice of reason for the Carolina fan base to be like, oh, everything's going to be good. Same thing happened when Carolina hired their new offensive coordinator. It was Drake May that quote tweeted it and basically said like, I'm all in on him. We've talked and I'm super excited for it. So he's like the calming voice of reason for all of Carolina fandom. But you have, yes, Mac Brown came out and said it in his press conference on Monday, December 19th, that he didn't name names or schools, but went so far as to say that there are schools that have kind of come after him. And like NIL is such a great thing in so many ways, but we are seeing kind of the ugly side of it here as part of the transfer portal, because NIL is not supposed to be a pay for play thing. And it seems like that's what it's turning into in some ways. And then interestingly, Pittsburgh's head coach, Pat Narduzzi, talked about this in his own press conference this week, saying, hey, yeah, I've also heard that these schools have offered Drake May multiple millions of dollars to leave North Carolina. Also didn't name schools. Some people, I think, hear that as like Drake May's leaving. He's just using that to say, this is the negative side of NIL, is why Pat Narduzzi's talking about that. And so, no, Drake May is staying in Chapel Hill. He has already confirmed that and affirmed it. For Oregon folks that don't know, he's kind of a North Carolina legacy player. His dad was North Carolina's quarterback. His older brother, Luke, hit a shot against Kentucky, actually, to send North Carolina to the Final Four against Oregon in 2017. Oh, wow. And so it's like, I didn't know that. That's crazy. Yeah. So he's a legacy guy and somebody that, very admittedly, is leaving literal multiple millions of dollars on the table to stay at North Carolina next year.
Oh, wow, man. That's awesome. That's beautiful, man, because as Duck fans, man, we just lost a 5-star quarterback. We got Bo Nix staying next year, but Dante Moore, yeah, he's off to UCLA.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't doubt it. I mean, Eugene, LA, which one are you gonna choose? You have opportunity to start day one, no doubt. So I don't blame the kid, but it was just funny that I thought you were gonna go to Drake May said, oh yeah, I'm gonna stay, and then he was probably gonna no, he's staying. Well, because Dante Moore, after a state championship game, our OC Kenny Dillingham leaves for Arizona State. He was asked straight up, are you gonna play for Oregon? He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to Oregon. And then like a week later, you can never trust these kids in recruiting, man. Yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, Isaac, I really appreciate you for joining the podcast, man. No doubt. Do you want to throw any of your social medias out there for people to go follow?
For sure. Absolutely. And Dom, thanks so much for having me, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in and having me. If you'd like to hear more about the Tar Heels, would love to interact with you. The place I do that most is on Twitter, and it's just my name, @Isaac Shade, ISAACSCHADE. And I do host, as Dom said, the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. I'm also the co-host of the Locked On College Basketball podcast, where we talk every day about college basketball, which is just hands down my favorite and the best thing on the planet. And so those are the best places to find me, and seriously would love to interact and chat with you. One of my best friends is a big Oregon Ducks fan, lives right there behind me. And so a big follower of Oregon and what the Ducks got going on.
Awesome. We really appreciate it, Isaac. This is your host, Dominic Peterson. Really appreciate everybody for coming on. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And most importantly, if you guys got an Oregon Duck friend, anything like that, just tell them about the Ducks on 503 podcast. Tell them to subscribe. Word of mouth is the best promotion. I get the algorithm with YouTube, but word of mouth is always the best. Appreciate you guys for always locking in. Go Ducks. Go Tar Heels. I can't wait to watch this Holiday Bowl. It should be historic. All right.